Welcome to Classical Chats. I'm Tiffany. I founded Together with Classical and Classical Chats with the hopes of building a more inviting and inclusive community for classical music, for the future of classical music going forward. And it means so much to have people who are interested in sharing their journeys with classical music from the generation after me. Yes, I'm getting old. Today we have the 18-year-old Felicitas Friederich from Germany. She's a piano student, currently taking a gap year to pursue music and practice and prepare for the audition process going into music university. We're going to talk about how she grew up, what it was like for her to grow up with musicians and artists in the family, how she overcame a very negative experience with competition, and how she grew to love the piano again and chose to pursue music. Welcome to Classical Chats.
Thank you so much.
I love that there has been a few, actually, have been a few applicants for Classical Chats who are younger than me and in school. And I love that there are young voices who want to be part of Classical Chats. So you are one of them, and I'm happy to, talk to you and hear about your journey so far. So tell me about yourself. Remind me how you started your journey in classical music.
Well, so actually, my parents are both artists. My father is a professional musician. He plays clarinet, and my mother is a teacher at University of Music for the art of speaking. So she's more into performing arts, and so I was into the whole artistry scene from a very early age on, and we always had our piano. So I just was so curious about this instrument, and one day I just started playing, and I started to get lessons at with a teacher who was a friend of our family, and so the whole thing just started to evolve. And I was also very active with ballet and also
Oh,
doing rhythmics and music and movement and such things as a little
that's cool.
girl.
I
So
did
that's
ballet too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if I've mentioned this, but yeah, I did ballet for a very brief period
Yeah.
of time. I remember very little about it, but I did do ballet a little bit, but I don't think movement was my thing. I don't know. Do you like to dance and move with your body and express through your body?
Well, yeah, I also stopped ballet, but I'm really into everything that has something to do with performing arts, to explore how music influences our movements and the other way around. So this is also something I really like to do.
That's
So
great.
yeah, that's how I just came into the whole scene, and yeah.
It's very organic, and you grew up with music in your family. I didn't have musicians in my family, but my dad did play a lot of music on his hi-fi system, so I did have music around, and I
Yeah.
had a toy piano to start, but it wasn't, anything compared to having a parent who is professional in music. You never thought of playing the clarinet?
No, I actually tried to start, but somehow my father never wanted me to, or to push me to play the clarinet, and my interests were always like around the piano or settled around the piano and everything around. So it never really happened. And
That's
today,
great.
I'm also a little bit sad about that. But now my second instrument is my voice. I'm also speaking and singing and all that stuff. So
Oh, how did you get into singing, and do you do kind of like speaking poetry or something?
yeah, so
Oh,
I got into this poetry kind of thing because of my mother, because this is exactly what she does, and she teaches people to be very present on stage and to also interpret the poetry, which is also important for example, for teachers, because they have to talk in their job very much. So she also helps them, and yeah, I got into singing because my mother also thought this is a very important thing because it's your natural instrument. And so I started singing I think the age of 5, and yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I also tried singing, but I didn't pursue it. I'm revealing a lot of myself about my childhood today to you. Yeah, I took, I think, I don't know, a few months of lessons, and I always felt so awkward. I did not like singing. I think my parents eventually figured out that I didn't really like singing. I mean, I was in
yeah,
children choir. I would lead choirs and yeah, do some sort of. Actually, I was like a host in like children choir, and so I like speaking to some degree and singing maybe, but I never wanted to hear my own voice.
yeah. It
And
is
my
actually
parents would
very
tape
difficult.
it. Yeah, my parents would tape it and then have me try to, improve upon the lesson and my singing, and I hated it so much. So that's not my thing. But it's interesting. I think I still don't know German, even though I try many times. But I do know that there is, a lot of kind of legacy of German poetry influencing classical music, like
Yeah.
songs of Schubert, Schumann, and so I wonder if you have any particular uh, interest into pursuing more of that kind of music because of your interest in poetry and singing.
Yeah, I can imagine that for future, because actually it's very interesting for me to be, especially with all the songs Schubert composed, to be a pianist, to be able to accompany the voice or to be the singer. So this, I think I would be able to maybe get into both roles and to feel how the difficulty of both roles could be. And so this is something I could actually imagine, because it's possible to study this also at university, for example, as a master's degree,
Mm.
especially or yeah, being more of an expert for everything that has something to do with the piano and voice. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great to. I feel old when I say this, and I don't mean it to be condescending, but it's so nice to be younger and then be like, I want to consider studying this, and I want to consider studying this. Like my studies are way in the past now, so it's fun to revisit some of those memories and feelings about, what do I want to do and what do I want to pursue. So I'm excited for you because it's very exciting when I was figuring out what I want to study in university. Um, one more thing before we move on towards your more current self, but growing up, is it difficult to? I mean, I don't know your parents, so this is a very neutral question, but is it difficult, or do you find it encouraging to have professional musicians in your family?
I I think it's the most encouraging thing because
That's great
yeah, because I
because
have
I've read. Yeah, sorry.
to,
I've read different feelings about this from some people would message me and say, oh, they feel the pressure of their parents because their
mm,
parents played the music, and so they feel extra nervous and stressed about pursuing music and not being able to live up to their expectations. So maybe if you have a positive experience, I'm really happy to hear that, and maybe you can share a bit about that.
yeah, of course. So I'm really happy that my parents are that supportive, because I have also some friends and people around me who experienced either that their parents have nothing to do with music, or they are feeling some kind of pressure. Or actually, I also know a person where the parents don't want the child to be better than themselves, which
Oh
is
no.
also very difficult. But in
Yikes.
my case, in my case, I just am so happy because I am in a family that is also very interested in any kind of arts, literature, and as I've also mentioned, the performing arts and all that stuff. So I feel more of a support and more of a kind of freedom to just express myself. And my parents sometimes tell me that they are so happy if they hear my music and also the music of my brother, who is a percussionist. So
Oh
um,
wow.
yeah, and I am just very happy about that, because, as you have mentioned, some people don't have don't are that lucky in that case. And I have learned so much, especially from my father, who also has experience with playing in an orchestra and playing in many different orchestras, and also having negative experience, because in music you always have contact to other people, and people are not always the kindest species. So for me, wanting to pursue such a career, the knowledge my father has and also my mother is very precious to me. So um, often we sat there and discussed my dream or my wishes, also because I was a bit torn apart between studying biology and pursuing a musical career. So we had these discussions, and this is just very important to me to be able to talk to them about those things.
That's really touching, and I'm really, really so happy for you that you have such a supportive and with parents who are involved, but not, in a way that's controlling, but really letting you feel the freedom. That's really, really touching. So, speaking of, negative experiences and also deciding on biology versus music, which do you want to tell us about first? I think those are very interesting topics to chat about because, you know, I had a very supportive mother who gave up her job to move with me and to New York from Hong Kong to study music. And so I definitely had supportive elements in my life, but also, I think everyone has their negative memories and experiences as well, even if generally speaking, it's a very supportive one. So maybe is there something that you wanted to share about that? Because you wrote that you did want to talk about this. So I'm not like pressuring you to talk about it.
Yeah, maybe I can start with dealing with the negative experience, because this is also something that influenced my decision, because I did some competitions before, music competitions, for example, Jugend musiziert. It translates to youth makes music, and it's a very big, the biggest music competition for young people in Germany. And um, now I'm also preparing for upcoming competitions, although I had a negative experience, because I learned to kind of use them for my advantage of developing musically and gaining new repertoire and getting used to the situation of performing in front of public. But I started at a competition some years ago, and I, in my opinion, played very good, and it was really kind of the best performance of that current repertoire I had that I ever made. And my teacher and all the close people around me also gave me this positive feedback. And then I didn't make it to the second round, although we all expected it to happen. And later that month, I learned that it was a member of the jury that said that my Beethoven I played couldn't be played the way I did it. So the first thing that happened was that I was devastated, not only because I admire Beethoven, but because my art and my heart and all the stuff got attacked. And of course, I know that there will be always someone who won't like my music or would interpret things differently. But this time it was kind of another thing, because the jury member didn't even said why I can't play the piece that way, and it was just very destructive. And the thing I would have needed in this situation was constructive criticism, as you also always tell, to be kind and keep striving. And the person just wasn't kind. And if someone had told me that I could have done better, I would have been able to strive into the right direction. But what I did was just withdrawing from my goal to become a pianist because of this one person. And the negative judgment weighed so much more than everything else. And as a musician, I know you're always confronted with the hard truth. And I know to deal with that today, I know that it is important to be told what is wrong or what needs to be improved. Otherwise, I can't make progress, and the music will also suffer from that. Sorry. So being a musician is also, I think, a constant conversation with myself, but at the same time, this is also what makes it that beautiful for me. And this is why, and that's what I learned from the whole thing, is that criticism should not be destructive. It should be always honest but constructive, and one should never lose the own idea of how I want to play, or of course based on what the composer gave us, but also what I want to say. And in my case, I just lost time because I did the opposite. I just stopped following my dream, and fortunately the dream found me again. But
Yeah, tell me about that because I smiled with empathy because I know exactly how you feel when you
yeah,
feel like you played so well and you had positive feedback and then you get
yeah,
eliminated. I know
yeah,
that feeling. Some people have been with me since 10 years ago when was going through competitions and keep on getting eliminated for various reasons. But um, I think for me, I just for me it wasn't that I stopped pursuing my dream of being a pianist, but to kind of shift my focus away from competitions, and I was very lucky to be able to do that. But
yeah,
um, yeah, so I just wanted to say I know how you felt, and I
yeah.
know also whoever's watching this or listening to this, I know how you feel when you get eliminated. So how did you find your way back to being a pianist? Because I had some very toxic people who were not very constructive and was always making myself doubt about my ability to play and have a career. And luckily it was a lot of it was maybe Schumann's music, but also
Yeah.
just music itself kept me going. But yeah, how did you kind of combat against that negative experience? Because it really was a very negative turning point in a way.
Yeah, yeah, it took me a while because not only that I had this experience, I also am a person that is interested in many other things, such as nature, politics, science, as I mentioned, biology, and basically all the things that happen in our world. So the first thing that happened is that I actually decided to study biology because I was very ambitious in school, and I could imagine also putting my energy into, for example, saving our environment or fighting climate change or stuff like this. So um, I kind of had to go away from the idea of pursuing a musical career. Although in this case, my family always was there and said, "We know that there is so much musicality inside you, and we would love to hear you having this dream again." And they were always there and told me I could do it. So this was one very, very important thing again, that I had my family. um, but at first, I thought, well, I'm going to study biology. And then one thing happened, and this has something to do with also coming back to music. I thought, well, if I'm going to university, um, and I'm going to be a scientist, I will never be able to keep up my playing on that level, and I won't be able to be an artist again, because I loved this atmosphere when I was a little child. I loved this atmosphere of being on stage and doing any creative thing, and I knew that it was already the relationship to it was already broken, because um, I was so involved in all the school things. I didn't really have time for any kinds of arts, except from the piano. But in this case, I realized I cannot study biology because I would not be able to live without art, and I would not be able to live without my piano. And the decision kind of came from one day to another, and I woke up and I knew that the piano was going to be my life. And I think this kind of reminds me of that those decisions are made by heart, and the music kind of found its ways back to me through my heart. I mean, this sounds very, I don't know, but
No,
it's
I know how you feel. It could maybe possibly sound cheesy or something a little bit exaggerated, but I do know that feeling when it's really the music and the instrument, and he's probably very happy to hear that also.
yeah,
That kind of connects you and you can't really resist that. And
yeah.
so, do you remember I guess you took time away. Did you stop playing the piano for a period of time and then come back to it, or were you kind of still playing a little bit when you gave up on your dream? Because I'm
I
curious how
yeah.
that was when you returned the first time you really returned to the piano.
So actually, I never stopped playing, but I just decided in my head I won't do any competitions again. I won't be studying. But the funny thing is, I never really stopped playing.
Mm,
But the point I came back to it was that I was actually starting to practice seriously again with my imagination, with everything. I know I had to regain the trust of my teacher again, because she was also very sad about the fact that I said I don't want to do this anymore, because she
mm.
also saw some potential there. And so it was very important to really get back to practicing for a longer period. So I if I played for my joy and for my just for myself and for no reason, so to say. And I also struggled with the fact that I would not be able to save the environment anymore if I'm not becoming a biologist. But the thing I realized is um, that music is a very idealistic thing to do. And I think whenever you're a creative person, you have the responsibility um, to just bring the message, whatever message it might be. And for me, it's the message that we are not living for ourselves. We also have the responsibility for the planet, and all the things, the people, the social injustice, and all those topics which are also very important to me. So I realized that my music could be a way of expressing those things, besides from music being just music and being wonderful as it is. But I think whenever you are creative, you also have the capability of reaching people, and the more people you reach, the bigger your responsibility is. And when I started practicing, really practicing again, um, I just felt better. And this was the moment when I knew that, well, I'm there again.
That's really beautiful. I love that you're so driven and you can already. I mean, I don't think I was thinking like this at your age, but maybe 2 years later. But to already think about something beyond yourself and what music um, is in relation to society and what you
Yeah.
can do with music rather than just playing all the notes of a piece of music. So, some questions came to mind when you were talking about how you have a message with your music. Have you then tried to make programs like concert programs or projects that have a more focused message like that? And also, when you were talking about practicing and real practice versus just kind of playing it without really feeling committed to pursuing it as a career, curious what that difference was like for you.
So for the first question, I don't know if you know this movement, Fridays for Future, who are like standing up and just standing in for climate justice. I tried to organize something where, in my city there is a university of music, and we have many students who also care about those topics. And so I decided to organize an event where many different groups of people would do musically, or would do something, any project, any small project you could perform on the streets. And there was, in the end, a choir made of students from the university who sang songs related to the nature, or like songs we talked about earlier, for example, from Schubert, or any
Mm.
kinds of um, songs related to any kinds of love for nature. And so this was something I tried to organize and to relate music and art um, to what I want to do for the environment. And actually, it worked because we had in the end only two real performances, but it worked and people saw it and it worked out. And I think this is very inspiring for the future. So it was a very small event. And I don't know how many people realized that there was this event. But I decided that I want to do concerts, especially with my brother, where we want to put this concert under a certain label. For example, mass extinction or any other kind of topic. And we want to play the music for itself, but we want the people to keep in mind um, that we are not alone on this earth. And so I think that would be an idea for further projects. It did not happen yet, but this is the plan, and I hope that it will reach some people. When I came home from school and it was a very exhausting day, I just needed to do something else. I would sit down on the piano and play and just enjoy the music. And this is it. And it was just so fulfilling for my heart. But I always had this feeling that nobody would ever hear this. And I knew that some things I did were good, or I thought they are good. And I was very sad about the fact that it would not be public someday.
Mm.
And when this changed, um, it actually also has to do something with watching your videos, because you always tell about that it is very important to know what the composer intended and in which circumstances of life he was and how this affects music. So what I did was finally starting to think about in which situation Beethoven was when he wrote this sonata, and any other background stories from the music. And I started to have a look at the piece from the beginning to the end. How is it developing? And I started to realize that if I'm having an idea in my head of how I want this to sound, it maybe will sound from just thinking about it. And this was such an interesting fact of kind of waking up. And now this also helped me very much with knowing how to use my body and my hands. And of course, my teacher also now told me very important things about that. And it was kind of like a puzzle, knowing to solve problems for myself. For example, when it comes to fingering or any other stuff, how to solve the problems I have. And basically, the thing is, now I just love a more analytical and a more problem solving way of practicing, because I actually know what I can do to reach the sound I want. And this has something to do with a greater overview of all the things.
I understand that. Yeah, I think I don't know if I. Well, no, I think for me, it's like if I don't have a goal to pursue, whether it's a concert or a recording in the future, then I might just be kind of playing, enjoying a little bit, and maybe just playing around, sight reading a bunch of pieces. But
Yeah.
then if I have a specific goal, then I would, like you said, kind of already know what direction it should go, the piece, and how I should practice to get to the
Mm.
ideal that I have in my head. So yeah, it's quite similar in that way. What's it like for you now? Trying to, I guess you are studying music, right? At university, or
I'm not.
sorry, I think you're
I'm in
not
that
yet.
phase. I'm in that phase. I made my final school exams in June,
Mm,
and now I'm in that phase where I'm practicing to be able to apply for an audition, and then finally making the audition, and then getting into the
mm,
university. So I'm in this special period Well, I think that is exactly because it might be interesting for people to hear what I say, because often you see the people who are already in the university or made their studies, and this a period of just preparing for an audition. I think this is also very interesting, and
Yeah, for
my
sure, because
mind where
yes.
we're at now. Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely tell us about it, because one of our other guests will be, or maybe by the time this episode is out, it would be out already. We have another guest who is in the United States that's also preparing for auditions. And so maybe you can tell us a bit about the process for you in Germany. I guess you're trying out for programs in Germany.
Yes. Um, so the first things I did are more of an organizational process, I guess, because I had to do some research for the repertoire I need to learn and the professors existing at different universities. So in my federal state, I have, I guess, 4 or 5 music universities, and that is possible for me to go to an audition at all 5 because this simply enriches your chances of getting
Yeah,
into it.
yeah.
And
Which part of Germany are you in?
Baden-Württemberg, so it is a very southern part of.
I think I've yeah, I don't think I've been to that place, that area, but cool.
Yeah. And so yeah, this there was a time where I just had to do some research which repertoire the universities want me to play for the auditions, and which music theory do you have to know, how is the audition just working, what are the different parts you have to do. And so I decided what I want to play, and now of course I'm practicing very much. And clearly for me, I the challenge is to build more perseverance, because I finished school in June and I was never able to practice more than I think 2 to 5 hours a day, and now I want to reach 6 hours, 8 hours, I don't know. And for me, it is just not possible to do that from 0 to 100. So I actually have this goal of someday being able to practice 6 hours, and of course, it is not possible to do that
Yeah. I
without
think
any preparation.
6 hours is a lot of hours. I think maybe that has happened less than 3 times in my life that I actually ever reached 6 hours. I
You know,
think it.
this is yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm amazed by people who can really feel like they can progress a lot and do that for 6 hours. For me, I have a limit, and sometimes it's like I have one thing I want to solve today. I solved it, and then I go to
Yeah.
sleep or something. So I'm very, very different, and yeah, that's very interesting. 6 hours. That's great though. You're very, very driven, and it really shows your attachment. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to spend 6 hours with you, even
Yeah.
though it's like 5 feet away from my bed. But that's really interesting. So, what are you preparing for the audition?
So the first movement of the Tempest Sonata from Beethoven, and
Hmm.
then a Scriabin prelude. I have Rondo Capriccioso from Mendelssohn, and Prelude and Fugue from Bach, and Chopin Black Keys Etude. So yeah.
A lot of technical
Um,
stuff.
yeah, and this is also something. Well, for me, it is very interesting to listen to what you told me now, because those 6 hours, I until now was never able to reach that. I never practiced 6 hours since I wanted to do it because my hands are really small and I have problems with all the tension that comes with certain bigger things.
What's
And
your reach, if I may ask?
I think it's slightly more than an octave. So, yeah. And this
But you
is,
see, someone asked me about this the other day, about having small hands, and the first thought that came to mind was Tom and Jerry. Do you know that cartoon with the cat and the
yes,
mouse?
yes,
The mouse can run a lot faster sometimes, you know? He's tiny. Jerry is tiny. And
yeah,
so I was like, yeah, you might have a little, leaps, and maybe you have to roll and break chords a lot. I still
yeah,
do. I mean, even though I can reach a
yeah,
little bit more.
yeah,
Um, but I'm like, be Jerry, in the
yeah,
Tom and Jerry.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
yeah.
This is also,
Um,
yeah, very important to me that that I hear that from you because um, well, 6 hours are the goal, and there are so many challenges that come from that. Not only my hands, but also my capability of concentrating. My head sometimes just says, "No, it's enough for today." So I slowly
yeah.
have to build the basics for practicing more than 3 hours a day. This is just the goal I set for myself. But I'm also a person that says quality comes before quantity because of what I told or what we talked about earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was my first worry was whenever I hear people counting their hours of practice
Yes.
and saying how they want to practice this many hours and if they
Yeah.
don't reach that amount then they are dead or something.
Yeah.
I feel like I like the approach of problem solving a lot more. So if I
Yes.
have a list of 5 problems I want to solve, I will spend however much time it takes. Sometimes it might be very little time, sometimes it might be a lot, but then it's like I can spend 6 hours and achieve two things, or I can spend 2 hours and achieve more than that, or same amount. And so for me
Yes.
it's very much problem solving, or not necessarily problems. Music is not made up of problems necessarily, but whatever
Yes.
goals I have, maybe I want to fix a spot or play differently in this particular page.
Mm.
So yeah, I would, if there's one thing I would say, is focus more on how much you can achieve rather than hours being the achievement itself. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm sure if you have the interest in body movement, and you would be very in tune with how you feel, and
Yes.
I feel like you would be smart to stop and not injure yourself, because it's also very, very easy to injure yourself if you spend so much time
Yeah.
practicing and really moving, working your fingers maximum.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? Reach the maximum limit of your finger strength. And but that's really interesting and very inspiring in a way, that you're so in love with the instrument and playing music that
Yeah.
you really want to spend so much time with it. That's really great. Or him, or her. I don't know.
Yes.
um, that's great. Well, I hope you have the best luck, and pursuing your passion, your idea of what you want to do with music, and getting into the programs that you want. I hope you do really, really well. When are there auditions?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
When are the auditions?
Um, well, I can decide if I want to do the audition in June or in November. And this depends on how I will do on the next competition I'm going to approach.
Ah,
And
is it related?
no, it's not related, but I just want to check how I feel with the program, and then I'm going to decide if I'm choosing the earlier audition or the latter. Yeah.
Hmm, that makes sense. And I don't know if this is common in Germany, or if it's just your own individual path. But for me, I never had that, or I didn't know that there was this gap between finishing school and then pursuing university. Of course, I was very lucky, and I basically got the lazy option because I was at Juilliard for so long that I didn't
Mhm.
need to do extra steps to get an audition. I was just automatically placed, so that was a very seamless process, but yeah, I didn't know that there is this period where you decide on getting into auditions after school.
You don't necessarily have to do this. Many people
Mm.
decide to do an off year or something like this, and I just decided to use it for practicing. Many people just finish school and then um, just get into
Go right into
university.
it. Hmm.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
so you're basically having like a gap year, they would say here in the US.
yeah, exactly.
That's great. Well, anything else that you want to share before we end the chat?
Maybe something I experienced because I visited this music high school kind of thing, which basically means in Germany that you are in a normal high school and there is an institution within the institution. So you
Hmm.
are in a class of normal people who do not play any music or maybe just for fun,
Hmm.
and there's a small group of people visiting this thing called music high school, and I experienced very often that people do not understand anything musicians do because they are not related to it. For example, a very simple thing, I needed to sacrifice my PE lessons if we were playing handball because obviously
Yeah.
yeah, it is dangerous. And there was just, why? And the teacher never understood it.
Oh
And people,
no!
yeah, people never,
What?
there were many people, just also teachers and students, who always thought of us musicians as being kind of lazy and hiding behind our instruments and all the thing. And what I want to,
That's really unfortunate. I mean, I
yes,
had exemptions from PE. I mean, I guess I was really lucky. I mean, I would expect it a little bit more from students. I think, yes, I felt a little bit of an outcast sometimes with students because of my interest in music. But
yes,
with
me,
teachers, I was very lucky that I'm my exemption, if it's handball or dodgeball or
yes,
basketball,
yeah,
anything with hands, getting crushed at some point.
yeah,
I would go up. We had like our gym in the school had two levels, and so there was like a balcony level where there are some elliptical machines, and you can go on for biking. And I would
yes,
always go up there, and the
yeah,
teacher like understood. But like that's so unfortunate that you. Oh,
yeah.
so how did you convince them, or not convince them? I guess. What?
I
How did you solve that?
I just because my parents went there and said, well, the rules of our music high school are actually allowing me to skip handball, and the teacher never
Oh.
really knew it. So what I just want to say is there are so many people, and this is not only did not only experience this in high school, I also experienced this in normal society, that people sometimes just don't understand the amount of passion, the amount of time, and all the things you have to put into music so that your results will be um, the one you wish for. And I think sometimes I would wish for society to be more appreciative towards art. And I'm so glad that there are formats like classical chats or people visiting concerts and just being interested in what artists are doing, not only musicians, artists in general. And I think what is very important to me is that people who do not know music and art are trying to at least understand that I think our culture is what makes humanity precious, because what will be there in the end will be our culture. And I think that art just is the breath of culture. And I would wish that people who do not know that much about it would show us more interest and maybe get fascinated and maybe understand that it is important that art is existing. Yeah, this is very important to me.
Yeah, no, I feel the passion in how you're talking about this, and definitely through classical chats or through a lot of these projects that I've been working on, it's trying to think of ways that we can introduce art or classical music
Yes,
into the rest of the world. Not necessarily saying there's like a border between, the
yeah,
music world and then the rest of the world, but
yes,
just something to draw them in. Do you have any ideas of how that could be possible to get the public more interested into the arts? And I mean, I understand here in the States, music is not even a requirement in the in the normal education program unless the individual school decides to. I think it's not even mandated. So
Yeah.
it's really unfortunate that it's not a very practical thing, and so it gets kind of sidetracked a lot in curriculums, or even just there's this stigma against the art of, oh, you'll be a starving artist, and so what's the
Yes.
point of learning about it and getting into it? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know any formats you could do to maybe bring it to the people, but I think what is very important is when people who work in politics or politicians make any decisions, it is very important to always talk to people who are in the scene, I would say, and to just hear what they can tell. Because I often experience that for the sake of saving money, music and art in general, although it is, I think, very important in Germany, sometimes people tend to sacrifice money which is there to support artists and musicians. And I would wish that before they sacrifice our lives, they would talk to us and would maybe hear some expertise. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely conversations very important
Yes.
to be open-minded and to have these conversations, so there is more of a dialogue rather than just, staying with perceptions of what the arts is or what music
Yes.
is, just and then dismissing it without really opening up the discussion.
Mm.
So, well, I'm very glad that you talked to me and shared your thoughts and experiences here on Classical Chats. I think many of what you've said would really resonate with a lot of people who are either young like yourself, going through, oh, it's like I get called young, but then it's you're even younger, so then I have to say this. But yeah, it's true. No, it's like it's very exciting to be figuring out your life going forward into university and trying out in auditions. I wish you all the best, and thank you for being part of Classical Chats.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the possibility. I really just enjoyed it.
That's great. That's the end of this Classical Chats. Thank you for listening. It was very inspiring and motivating for me to hear from an 18-year-old how motivated and very passionate she is about music and pursuing music. And so, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this chat, and be sure to check out our other episodes of Classical Chats, as well as any other fundraisers that's currently going on. Thank you for your support. Be kind, keep striving.